Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Tabir podcast. We are on episode 21, and I am joined by Loz Antonenko. Is that right? I got it right?
You got it. You got it.
Cool, awesome. How are you?
I'm bloody fabulous. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic for a Saturday morning. Can't complain too much, of course. Nothing to complain about. Now, I wanted to have you on because I feel like your energy is fire, your story is wicked, and the amount of determination you have is unbelievable. And we spoke on stage what was it? Couple 3 months ago. Now I think it was
Was it
3 months.
3 months ago? Was it 3 months? I
Yeah,
mean, it hasn't time fly.
I'm pretty
Crazy.
sure. It's like wild.
Crazy.
So who is Mojo mentor Loz Antonenko?
Well, I got to a stage in my life, Kyle, where I had realized I'd accumulated a lot of really unique skills in a way that didn't really make sense to people, going from information technology to social science and back again, and giving myself lots of lessons in life by accumulating more trauma plot twists than a binge-worthy Netflix series. I came to the conclusion that really, when people were engaging with me, what they were saying is that they loved my energy and they felt like they lacked mojo, and hanging around somebody like me was inspiring them to move them from meh to amazing. And so I kind of just decided to call myself a Mojo mentor. I tried a few versions of that. I tried sustainable lifestyle coach, and then people kept contacting me to build sustainable homes, realizing that that's not what I did. And then I tried healthy habit coach, which kind of stuck for a little bit. But yeah, I like to tell everybody I'm the world's best Mojo mentor.
That's great. It's funny how we learn all these things and then we end up labeling the one thing that is us to try and
Mm.
determine our belonging in the world. Um,
Yeah, I think that people, the thing is, when people are looking for you, you've got to be able to show up in places where they're actually looking. And if you do create something that's a little bit long or challenging for people to understand, and the reason I say Mojo Mentor is because people go, "What's that?" And
ah,
I like that. But people are looking up, health and well-being and using good SEO and things like that on my pages and in my social media. That will direct people to the right channel and the right path to find me. But I think we get really caught up in the labels and the branding and the logo and the color schemes, but we forget that we actually still need to connect with people, and people will be looking for something that they need. So touching into their pain points and leaning into their fears and their challenges is going to be the best way for you to show up for people to find you.
yeah, it's very important. I know I've been caught up in all the creation side of things, and then it's really detrimented my own timing, and then also how people can find me. And that's, I guess that's the beauty of like when we're creators, when we're content creators, when we're mentors, when we're coaches, we can sort of find our rhythm and work what's well for us and what's not associated well for us, and then people will find us in that way. And that's
Yeah.
something that I'm I'm honing in right now in the stage of life that I'm at, in the stage of journey that I'm at, which is great, which is cool. It's a cool solidification piece in my nervous system. And you mentioned you're a health coach, you called yourself a sustainable health coach at one point. So where does that come from? Where does that come from?
So I actually have a degree in IT, and people don't realize that I actually came from a very yang paradigm where everything was about the hustle and the grind, and I didn't realize that I'd buried decades of depression and anxiety just really deep in productivity and a coffee addiction.
Mm,
And I've always been in business. I actually started my first business at 15. I'm 40. And more than half my life, I've actually been running very successful small businesses. So I think there's always been that entrepreneurial spirit, and more so a solutions orientated spirit. All of my businesses have been designed around solving problems, not necessarily within my immediate skill set, but I always find a way, and I tend to build the plane while I'm flying it. So the sustainable lifestyle coach label that I created came from me being challenged by a health, let's call it an illness system, a sickness system that really I fell through the cracks of. And, over a period of about 2 decades, I ended up spending about $600,000 to keep myself alive and well. And I found that the hospital system and the illness system had kept me there where, all of the things I was trying to get better and, experimenting with lots of things, they weren't covered or recognized by mainstream medicine. And it was very frustrating because as somebody that experienced mainstream medicine firsthand and got pushed and pulled from one medical specialist to another and has accumulated more medical acronyms after my name than really anybody should have to remember, I myself became quite trapped in a system that was very unsustainable. And I call it subsidized dependency. We sort of coexist in this land where we're forced to take pills or injections or taken down these paths where we become reliant on a product to give us the outcome that maybe we didn't even really desire, but it's less worse than what we were facing before, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So I found we were getting engaged, whether we liked it or not, in unsustainable medical practices. And so through my own challenges, like I swear, like if trauma earned frequent flyer points, Kyle, I would have been handpicked for a seat next to Katy Perry on that spaceship. Honestly, I mean, I can't make up some of the challenges I've been through. Domestic violence by a close family member. I've had heart surgery after they found a hole in my heart in my 30s. A night in hospital after my drink was spiked and I was sexually assaulted. Multiple autoimmune conditions, and widowed by suicide. And then add to that 3 brain tumors over 10 years. And you can see, getting caught in a system would be pretty easy for somebody like me if I was to just take the advice that I was given. And so through all of those challenges and being solutions orientated with a very pragmatic mindset, I ended up finding ways to be more sustainably healthy. Now, I've been told, and I know for you yourself with your journey, that you shouldn't be able to do this and you can't do this and all of these things that you get told by medical specialists, but then you do it not in spite of, but because of that. And so on my own personal journey, not just through education, but through challenge and trauma and suffering and pain and grief, hauling this giant grief case the size of the national debt through my life day in, day out, I realized that, we're all carrying something, but we actually get to choose how heavy that thing will be. And, it might be fear and it might be doubt. It might be something else. I mean, mine is visible on medical imaging, with things in my brain and blood work, but finding sustainable ways to actually get ourselves unstuck. For me, it was just something I did for myself. And I realized as I was going through my journey of going from broken to unbreakable, from stuck to unstoppable, is that most people out there who were witnessing my journey through social media and the way I was sort of sharing my story, they're going, well, how did you do that? Like that, I wouldn't have done that. That's crazy. That's awesome. Like, tell me how to do what you did because I'm so entrenched and stuck right now. And so creating that sustainable cycle of teaching people actually, what if we, instead of try and do more, what if it's about doing less more often? What if we can simplify to amplify and focus on the things that we're already doing in our day? Because I tell you what, every single decision you make, every single habit you have, every part of your daily routine from the moment you wake up to the moment you fall asleep, not go to bed, but fall asleep, because sometimes there's a disconnect between when people go to bed and when they actually fall asleep. Yep. Everything inside of that actually gives you the outcome of your life right now. And outside of the things that you can't control, there's a bunch of things you can control. And I call those things handbrake habits. And so I've actually developed a couple of systems. One is a daily habit system, which is called the handbrake habit system, where we focus on our eating, our breathing, our sleep, our movement, and hydration, which all are habits we have that most of us are driving around with those locked right up and we're not doing those things well. So the process of that is, how do we unlock each of those things without focusing too much on all of them, but just one of those things where it will unlock the others. But then the other system I have is called the healthy habit hierarchy, which is actually like an operating system that we can use in our lives to learn how to get unstuck and be sustainable. And so that's why I call myself a sustainable lifestyle coach, because I'm teaching people how to have a sustainable lifestyle, but I realized it didn't really make sense because people thought I was in environmental science and building like ecologically sustainable houses. So I was getting all these weird online inquiries about building homes. And I'm like, what? That's not what I do. And so then I started changing the title. So then I called myself a healthy habit coach, which I still refer to. But, I'm like a Lycra loving badass OG ADHD bestie next door, really. That's how I describe myself. Depends on the circle and the context, really.
Oh, so that was a lot of information. Thank you again for sharing, and it's fascinating when we can take it back when we can take a step back and reflect on the journey we've had from whether we're 15, whether we're 16, whether we're 10 or 30 or 21 of how far we've come. And I want to go back to that point you made around like the traditional healthcare system because this is something that's huge that I feel like a lot of listeners need to hear. Not necessarily like want to hear, like they may ignore it, but at the same time, it's like your body provides you with ultimate wisdom. And something I had to learn the hard way is I was numbing myself with prescription medication. I was numbing myself with alcohol most weekends. I was numbing myself with food. I still that's a habit. That's a big habit. Like food particularly, especially sugar. But I was numbing myself with all these things, and I was actually disconnected from my body. And then I used to be a chronic asthmatic as well. I used to use my puffer on a constant basis. And it's been a long journey. It's been over 3 years since I've been off medication for over 3 years. And it's a testament to yourself and how far you've come, but also like knowing that those medications are actually suppressing you. That food is actually suppressing you. That alcohol is actually suppressing you. And it's the biggest cause of depression, and particularly in men and also women. And it's once you can step away from that, and once, as you say, depending on the circle that you're in, you share with people of who you are and what label you put towards it, and people can define you from the label. But at the end of the day, you're Loz. You're Loz Antonenko. You're who you are and a sovereign being. And once you can step away from those labels and all the conditioning, all the beliefs, all the bad habits, even the behaviors aren't even yours to start off with. You can actually step into a life that you can be proud of, that you can live wholly from, that you can live fully from, and you can experience the moment of joy, the moment of sovereignty without any of that lower energy center, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's all about alignment too and understanding what your value systems are. And I have conversations on a daily basis as a coach and a mentor where people feel really ingrained in the sense of stuck. In fact, a global study found that 73% of people felt stuck in some way. And that was employees and employers of fairly large companies. And so we're not alone in our feeling of stuckness. Yes, we have this idea and belief that we are unique individuals, which we are, but when we're all stuck in some way, right? It's about giving ourselves mechanisms to realize that on the other side of fear and doubt and whatever your flavor of suffering is, actually sits a life that you can engineer towards joy and you can gear towards happiness. But I think the big disconnect, especially now, I mean, we're in an era, in a paradigm that is laced with all sorts of algorithmic content that's bombarding our brain system,
Mm.
where it is completely synthesized and augmented to give us those pips of pleasure in those pleasure centers of our brain. And we constantly seek this external gratification and these external things that we believe are actually going to bring us towards some sort of equilibrated happiness, which they never do, because until you come home to yourself and home to the things that mean the most to you, and that's your value system, how on earth are you supposed to be actually unequivocally fulfilled so that you can continue showing up as your best self? And I think this is where people get stuck, is that they, don't even know what their values are. Number one, like that's the biggest challenge. I mean, people in the school system, we're not having conversations about values, right? We're
No.
having conversations about triangulation and, adverbs. I think that formally at an education level, we're not being trained to understand who it is that we are. And you mentioned like our conditioning, like our cultural upbringing, the experiences that we have, they shape our identity and our sense of self and the way that we think things ought to be. But I think we also become incredibly welded to the way we think things should have to become for us. And that's based on a lot of external things that we are reaching for because we really haven't come home to ourselves. I think for me, the big crossroads, getting sick. I mean, there's been many, many twists and turns in my life. Do you know what I mean? Like it's not like there's just been this one momentous occasion, but every opportunity now, like looking back, I've realized that every challenge has been a choice to change
Mm.
and to make a decision to rather than run from my former self in fear and through guilt to decide what I wanted my future to look like. Yet we are kind of mechanically programmed to fear all the time. I mean, people, when they're selling to us, are always leaning into our pain points. What's your biggest fear? What's your biggest fear? And NLP and other types of, systems of selling and convincing people what they need. I mean, they plague us on a daily basis. So, we kind of are engineering our own demise and unhappiness. I mean, that's why, there's so many books out there and people are paying for therapy, Kyle. But I feel like if we just came home to our values, it would make our lives a lot easier. Being sick forces you to evaluate your life, right? Whether it's an illness that people visually can recognize or if it's an invisible illness, it's a psychological illness, it's a physical illness. Some form of dysfunction in our body where something isn't right can give us clues as to what we need to unpack. My latest challenge, which was being diagnosed with 2 more brain tumors only 10 years after my first one, really, which wasn't that long ago, it was around Christmas time 2024. It really forced me to sort of reevaluate the direction of my life. I'd actually just been running a business for about 17 years, a busy retail bricks and mortar business selling mobility equipment. So on a daily basis, I was being impacted by lots of people who were really stuck and needed help. And they were coming to see me because maybe they'd lost their mobility in some way or a loved one had had a challenge and they needed equipment. And so you're being brought back to real problems on a daily basis and you're seeing it through the lens of someone else. But when I sold that business in August last year, the process of getting that business sold was one of the most stressful experiences of my entire life. And I don't think I realized just how stressed I was. I had completely normalized this very high functioning stress addiction that I had. And so in September last year, a month after we sold the business, I had a massive crash with my energy. I was training like a beast and eating like a monk. My fatigue levels were off the charts despite having a PhD and pushing through. I tell you what, I never experienced such a level of fatigue. And I went to my specialists and nobody could tell me what was happening. They then did a blood test because they asked for more tests and they found an elevated level of a certain hormone in my blood. And they said, well, that can only mean one thing. Either you're pregnant or you got a brain tumor. I'm like, And so I asked for some brain scans, and that's when I found the second one, accidentally actually, which was on my pineal gland. And your pineal gland is a gland that regulates your sleep and wake cycle, right? So your pineal gland, very important energetically,
Mm.
but also physiologically an incredibly integral part of your energy system. And so I didn't know that I had that. I've never had one there before. And so here I am kind of getting caught in this mainstream medical model, using it to my advantage to get some sort of diagnosis or insight into what was happening in my body. But I tell you what, most of the work I've had to do has been more energetic than physiological. So I knew that I had some growth in my brain in September. I didn't get confirmation with that scan until a couple of days before Christmas. And pretty much all of this year has been a complete write-off. I've really revised. And when I say write-off, is in like all of the ideas that I thought that I had at the end of last year to set in motion for my New Year's resolutions, I just parked those and it's been wonderful. I've reevaluated my business delivery. I've scaled back and realized that I really need to engineer a business model that fits better for me instead of giving and giving and giving and being there for all of the people face to face. I'm like, I can actually have more reach if I create an online academy and my entire library of laws goes into some sort of digital library and an academy and some education hub. And that's about to launch actually very, very soon. But that actually completely changed my business and forced me into another direction. I'll tell you what, I've never been more profitable. I've never been more stable. My energy has increased significantly. I've had to take some alternative routes to find some healing. And a lot of it has been about equilibrating my yang energy with more yin energy to bring, rather than suppress my yang, which is incredibly high. I'm very driven and focused, even with ADHD, because I love what I do. I've had to now elevate my yin energy to match my yang. And so lots of meditation, lots of time in solitude, lots of opportunity to rest and recover. And I tell you what, like, I'm so excited now that I've worked that out, because I think if I've been running like this my entire life, just all in yang, all in sympathetic, nervous system territory, how much more could I achieve now that I'm like finding this level where there's not really much resistance now? And I mean, that's really exciting as someone that has normalized this energy their whole life, to realize that that's not the only way forward. It's pretty cool.
It's really it's really cool to actually have that energetic feeling within your body to know that. And that's I think that's the biggest thing with people is that they don't know how to feel the energetic feeling within their body. They're normally like they're just going day to day without recognizing all the stuff they're consuming. And you mentioned before, like with mobility, because this is something that I love talking about. It's part of my mission in the world is like around mobility and educating people with disabilities specifically to actually they can overcome their condition, they can overcome their disease if they choose to with the right resource and the right tools and this is essentially one of the reasons why I created this podcast to help those people, but also most importantly, give back to the world to allow them to allow them to hear some stuff that might shift their life just like that. Like any sort of wisdom that they can get from my guest, myself, it's great. But the biggest thing around the mobility side of things would be because obviously you'll be selling equipment, right? I take there'll be like wheelchairs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So there's a level of that would have been I couldn't imagine the stress you would have gone through trying to sell it, especially with all the requirements and all the other stuff. But the idea behind mobility is like trauma is the one cause of all disability. It's as much as it's as I generalize that, but at the same time, it's like when you go back to the root cause of any condition, any disease, there's trauma related symptoms from that. And I'm sure you would agree it's a testament to your own journey and a testament to anyone who's on the same path as us, because we're all collective initially, is that once you can overcome your traumas, once you can overcome your fears, the guilt, the shame, all the lower energy centers, you can be the best version of yourself. You can create
Yeah.
from a place of joy, of love, of connection, of happiness, instead of feeling like you're depressed all the time, feeling like the world in a victim mentality, like blaming everyone else. But in reality, we've got to blame ourselves. As you said, the choices we've made up until the point of now have gotten you where you are in your life. And like I'm like, fuck. It's one thing I preach by. It's one thing that I hear so many mentors and coaches and speakers like you and I that preach on. Is like those choices create your reality.
They
And
sure do.
And it's about recognizing them, being aware to them, and making a conscious choice to move through them. And that comes with like that comes with like using different modalities, different tools to actually become aware, because that's the first step to any movement, any decision you make.
Yeah. I work with clients. So when I when I was trapped in the depths of my dark nights of the soul, because I had multiple times where it was really challenging. This is where I started exploring modalities to get myself unstuck. So I studied. I actually, in my 30s, became a personal trainer, then a nutritional advisor, then a life coach, cognitive behavioral therapy practitioner, advanced breathing instructor. So I studied 13 different things. This interdisciplinary approach, ADHD can't help it, overachiever, right?
Yeah.
But for me, it was never the intention to coach people. It was the intention to heal myself on this journey of research and me search, because it was I had to find myself through the research because of the way that my brain is wired, and I'm an infomaniac, always needing to know and understand and ask questions. And then I realized I was asking really poor questions of myself. So instead of asking things like, why me? Like, why does this always happen to me? I was like, okay, wait, what can I learn from this? And that was that mindset shift. And so when I work with clients now, so as like a health and well-being expert, I have a very interesting cross section of clients that I work with, and I actually love working with people with disabilities. I have 7 young men, all with ASD and various other spectrum-based things that they're managing on a daily basis. Right. I also have some clients who have cerebral palsy. I've got a client that's quadriplegic, and I love this because the biggest thing that I find is that they become their own barriers in their head. And when we start using modalities like movement, so in a gym, for example, I've got a client, he has many, many layers of things that he's been working through, a lot of trauma that have been associated to labels. Because when I always engage with people who have disabilities, they tend to share with me what their formal diagnoses are, right? And I say, so in your own words, how do you feel? Like, how would you describe yourself? And so when you're having those conversations and you hear it back from them in a way that's their own language, we can then start to unpack that. And what you'll find is that just through movement and this sense of achievement and this sense of worthiness, we cultivate confidence, we
Hmm.
cultivate competence, autonomy, and self-governance. And they are the 4 things that I love to bring out in people. And what I love about working with young men with ASD especially is they love my no BS approach to everything. And I do tell them straight up, hey, look, I have ADHD. I was diagnosed in the 90s before probably you were born. I don't take medication for anything. When I get excited, I get loud and I get fast with my speech. If I'm overwhelming you, because I probably will, just tap me on the shoulder and tell me to dial it down. And they love that I just give them that disclaimer up front, because they're like, oh, this chick is for real. Like, she is like not a synthesized version of reality. She hears me in my weirdness as well. And, they follow directions so well because they take everything literally, these young men with ASD especially. But what I love is that the impact that has is so magnified because they've spent a life feeling disempowered, feeling discouraged, feeling and leaning into that mentality of, oh, I've been told that I'm not able to do this because of X, Y, and Z, when really they actually can. And they probably are going to be amazing at it, but they just need somebody to see that in them. And I think you've hit the nail on the head. I mean, I think that the trauma and challenge are all integral in our own growth trajectory, but growth isn't linear.
No,
Growth is never linear. It's
no.
all, it's like, you know, getting from A to Z,
All of them, yeah.
right? Not A to B, but it's interesting. I think that we definitely become our own limit.
Very, 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 very true. And that's the thing. Once I think most people that start this journey like do it for themselves, but ultimately to help themselves. And then obviously once they can help themselves, they can obviously help others and be a mentor and a coach. That I know full well of the experiences I've gone through. I've shared that with people with disabilities, from my brother's friends, through mentors, through clients. And speaking on podcasts and stage, like people message me here and there, and it's like it's great because it's the fuel to keep going, right? But also there's
Right.
that internal inspiration within inside of me that's like I know exactly what I'm doing in the world. I'm going to keep moving forward and keep progressing to where I want to go and bring my magic to every person I get to connect with, and that's the biggest thing. It's that feeling of disconnection. A lot of people with disabilities, this is coming from my perspective. So I reframe that, but I felt disconnected in my body. And then I felt like everyone
Yeah.
around me was having a go at me for no particular reason. And internally I was actually projecting my own shit on them. And it comes to realization in life where you can't keep playing that mentality. You can't keep playing victim card because everyone's just not going to sympathize with you all the time and love being direct. I love being direct myself, so it's very important to acknowledge that with communication and with the integrity within
Yes,
yourself to share that back to them because a lot of people don't know how to communicate, which is something I'm working on at the moment. I'm writing a couple of things at the moment, specifically around books around communication. So it's great. I'm looking forward to sharing that with the world. Um, but more importantly, the biggest thing is that anything is possible. The To Be
sure
podcast
is.
is created for that reason. Anything is possible in the world. As long as you believe it, you will achieve it. As long as you find the right circle, align with your values. And if you don't know what your values are, reach out to someone who does. Someone who can actually walk through a process with you, understand what you love, what you don't love, and walk together with that journey because it can take a lot of courage to do that. And even if it's just the simplest things, there's tools, there's research, there's education, there's so much things that are possible. You just have to be willing to actually make that step and be willing to change for yourself. But more importantly, have the courage to do so.
And just
And,
start, right? Like just
and just
start
start.
wherever
Yeah,
it
yeah.
is. Like just
Just
start. Like just
start.
start, do something. Like it's I think we have this idea that we have to have these big grand gestures to change our life and it has to be this all or nothing approach. And that is bullshit. The more simple you can make it, pick the thing that you know you can actually change. The one thing you can change. Maybe it's not your values. Maybe that's not the first place to start, but at least identify what they are and then challenge your values. Maybe it's just drinking more water because I tell you what, if you show up to battle being dehydrated, it's not gonna be pretty. Have a little bit more sleep, an extra 15 minutes. Physiologically, if we prime ourselves to be in a position where we can make better decisions because we're actually physiologically in a better place than we were yesterday because we've paid attention to our body. We haven't used it as a punishment tool. We've used it as a self-care tool to listen and feel the feedback. Are we tired all the time? Are we thirsty all the time? Do we have no energy at 3 o'clock in the afternoon? Are we sore in our back and our hips and our neck because we've been sitting all day? Are we feeling lightheaded because we've actually not been breathing properly throughout the day because our posture, we look like a prawn sitting at a desk? These are actually really simple tools to help us unlock that better mindset. And I think the value of not overlooking the physiological stuff can actually be sometimes more beneficial than going in deep too quick because people are really scared of going in deep too quick because it's challenging their own identity. Yet I guarantee you, if you just focus on like the things you're already doing and you manage those and you make them a little bit less shit, you'll probably find that being able to tune into what it is that actually matters, the really deep, gooey, icky, heavy stuff, it's going to feel a lot easier when we actually show up for ourselves in a better space.
100%, 100%. Now, I'd love to continue and chat about this because I can talk about this for days on end, years on end, however long it's to be. But I feel like this was perfect. I appreciate you coming on. And I wanted to ask, where can people find you?
Best place to find me is on social media. If you just look up my name, if you just look for that picture down the bottom of the screen with the yellow background, you'll find me. Just type in Lozant and the rest will fill itself in, even if you can't pronounce it. But my website, which is lozlife.com, because I am international. If you put a .au, you'll still go to the same spot. It's a little hub of wisdom. I am actually opening up a brand new hub. It's called the Healthy Habit Hierarchy Academy. Don't say that too fast, too many times, but it abbreviates to H3A. That'll be launching really, really soon. So I might come to you from the past or the future. I don't know, whenever it is that you're listening to this, but look that up. Once you find me, it's very easy to continue to find me, but I'm there. Please don't be scared to send me a DM. I reply to everyone's DMs normally with a voice message.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, thank you again for coming on. I appreciate it. And I'm sure that anyone listening and watching to this has gotten heaps of value today. And be sure to like, subscribe, and to comment your key takeaways. Thank you again, Loz.
Appreciate it, Kyle. It's been an honor and a pleasure. Thanks, mate.